Hi everyone, welcome to week 7. So we already started focusing on macroeconomic topics. We started chapter 6 last week. Hopefully you understood all the concepts we had in chapter 6. Chapter 6 was about elasticity, and I also reminded you guys how important chapter 6 is in terms of the questions that you get on the test, on the second test. This week we're going to study chapter 7. Before I move on to chapter 7 and point out a few things about this chapter, I got some emails from you. You had some questions about elasticities in chapter 6. So what you need to know especially for price elasticity of demand, is that we have two different formulas for both price elasticity of demand and even for price elasticity of supply. This price elasticity of supply is very, very similar to price elasticity of demand. However, the focus of chapter 6 is on price elasticity of demand. So you will get lots of questions also from price elasticity of demand. But in terms of formula and concept, price elasticity of supply is very, very similar to price elasticity of demand. Remember, we had two formulas. We had this formula where you're dividing the percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, and then you have the midpoint formula, okay? So if you look at the examples, and if also you read the notes and everything, and if you also look at the questions that we did in terms of homework, and if you also go ahead and look at the practice question that I put for you on D12, you can tell basically not all the time you can use that percentage change formula, percentage change in Q divided by percentage change in price. Why? Because 99.9% of time you have no idea about your initial price, your initial quantity, your new price, and your new quantity. So you cannot use that formula. You are going to end up with different answers basically, because the questions typically tell you, okay, when the price is 1, quantity is 5. If price is 2, the quantity is 7. Then calculate the price elasticity of demand. So you have no idea which price is new, which price is initial. Same thing for quantity. So you are not going to use that percentage formula. You have to use the midpoint formula. Why? Because when you use the midpoint formula, basically you can, first of all, you can play around with midpoint formula and always end up with a positive answer. Remember, the price elasticity of demand in nature is negative because of the law of demand that we had in chapter 3. But that's fine. We're going to look at the absolute value. We're going to drop the negative sign. Okay, no problem there. But if you use the midpoint formula, you can play around with numbers and always basically make your answer positive. Okay, that's one thing about the midpoint formula. Also, in midpoint formula, we're basically taking the average of price and quantity. So it's not really important to know which price is new, which price is initial. Same thing for quantity. That's the beauty of midpoint formula. That's why we use the midpoint formula, okay? But sometimes you have to use the first formula. And I think if you have enough practice and look into different questions, you can tell basically when you should use the midpoint and when you should use the other formula. If you're calculating the elasticity, definitely use the midpoint formula for price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply. For income and cross elasticity, I'm not going to ask you to calculate them. The only thing you need to figure out is the sign, okay, as I told you also in my previous video last week. For the other formula, the percentage formula, if you have, and the question basically gives you the percentage change in price and percentage change in quantity, so you have the percentages, then you can use that formula. You should just divide the percentage change in quantity by percentage change in price, and bam, you're done. Or I can give you the price elasticity. I give you the percentage change in quantity, and then ask you to calculate the percentage in price. Okay, that's another application of that formula. But in terms of calculating price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply, when we have prices and you have the quantities, always use the midpoint formula. Okay, if you have the percentages, just plug them in that ratio, percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, and then you are done. Okay, so that's about chapter 6. Chapter 7 is the only chapter we're going to talk about basically consumers in this class, because remember, this is a micro class. and the focus of our class is on businesses. So we're more focused on production, how businesses are operating, things like that. But chapter 7 is about utility, which is related to consumers, okay? I tried actually to keep this chapter short. Definitely read the book as always, but if I didn't cover anything in the lecture notes, it means that you don't have to read it on the book, okay? What is utility? Utility is basically your satisfaction or the pleasure that you get from your consumption, okay? So we try actually to measure this utility in economics. And there are different ways that economists come up with numbers for utility. And I just want you to just accept these numbers, just look at them as an example, but you can be skeptical about it. For instance, if you do not like pizza, so your utility for pizza, your satisfaction from pizza is 0, okay? But economists try to kind of rank different products and then just see how much the consumers actually rank them. So they come up with all these numbers for utility, okay? But it's very, very complicated the way that they calculate this utility. So just accept them, okay? And the unit we have for utility is called util. So let's say if I eat 1 apple, my satisfaction, my utility from apple is 5 util. Just an example, okay? That's how we read all those numbers. So make sure you know the definition for utility. Then we also have 2 important concepts when it comes to utility. Total utility and marginal utility. Total utility is obviously your total satisfaction, okay? From buying something, from consuming something, from eating something, drinking something, okay? From basically your consumption, all right? Then we have marginal utility. Anytime that you hear the word marginal, and from now on, we're gonna talk a lot about marginal, it means extra, additional. So marginal utility is your extra satisfaction from consuming 1 more unit of output. If you go back to chapter 1, we also define marginal cost and marginal benefit. We kind of use the same terminology. Marginal cost, for instance, was the extra cost of producing 1 more unit of output. And in the future chapters, we will learn how to calculate these marginal costs, these marginal profit or marginal benefit. Starting with this chapter, actually, we're going to learn how to calculate marginal utility now that we know the concept. There's a formula for it. Again, this is an online class, so definitely you can have the formulas ready when you're taking the test or when you're doing your homework. I'm fine with that. Just know how to use that, okay? So the formula is the change in total utility divided by change in quantity. So whenever we say change, it means the difference between the 2 total utilities that you have and the difference between the 2 quantities that you have, okay? So when, for instance, you want to calculate in a table the marginal utility of, let's say, the 3rd glass of water that you are drinking, you should look at the difference between the total utility when you are drinking the 3rd cup and the total utility of the 2nd cup, the previous unit, okay? Divided by change in quantity, which is 3 minus 2, 3rd cup, 2nd cup. Makes sense? So we're going to do the same thing for marginal cost, for marginal benefit. In the future, we will have marginal revenue. So make sure that you are comfortable with this marginal concept, okay? Let me just go back to my notes. So make sure you know the concept, as I just said, know how to use the formula. Another important concept we have in this chapter is called the law of diminishing marginal utility. What does it mean? It means that basically your total satisfaction from your consumption is not going to go up forever, okay? If you're super thirsty, the 1st glass of water that you drink, the 2nd glass of water that you drink will give you the highest satisfaction. Your total utility is pretty high. Same thing goes for eating something. If you're super hungry, the 1st burger you have, the 2nd one will give you the highest satisfaction. You're going to enjoy it because you're very, very hungry. But as you drink more and more, as you eat more and more, your total utility is still going up, but not as fast as before because you are not as thirsty as before. You are not as hungry as before, right? Also, when you look at your marginal utility, that's your extra satisfaction. Remember, that's marginal, additional, extra, starts to drop. So your marginal utility is very high at the beginning, but that changing your total utility starts to drop as you eat more and more and more and more. We call this law of diminishing marginal utility. So remember, when your marginal utility is going down, your total utility is still going up. I definitely want you guys to pay attention to the diagram we have for marginal utility and for total utility. So your total utility at the beginning is going to go up very, very fast, very kind of sharp, and then it slows down. It is still going up, but not as fast as before. At some point, your total utility is maxed, okay? And then after that, your total utility starts to drop, okay? If you compare it with marginal utility, your marginal utility is going down from the very beginning. It is positive as long as your total utility is going up, okay? We don't care if it's going fast or slow, but as long as your total utility is going up, your marginal utility is positive, okay? Going down, decreasing, but positive. As soon as we hit that maximum point in our total utility, if you look at the graph, your marginal utility is 0. And if your total utility starts to decline, your marginal utility is still going down, but it will be negative, okay? I always tell my students, think about this negative marginal utility, the point that you are going to throw up. You are eating too much burger that you cannot even handle it anymore, okay? So your total utility is decreasing, you're gonna throw up, so your marginal utility is negative, okay? That is the point that you have to stop, all right? While we'll study this chapter at all, before I look at my notes, so the idea of understanding this utility, these marginal utility, the law of diminishing marginal utility is because as consumers, we want actually to be happy, right? We want to find a place where our utility, our satisfaction from different goods and services that we buy and consume is maximal. How we can find that? It depends on our marginal utility, our satisfaction, our extra satisfaction. It depends on our income, and also the prices of different goods and services that we buy. So if we want to be happy buyers, we have to look into our income, our budget. We have to look into the prices and our marginal utility. Our satisfaction as a consumer is maximum, okay, whenever the marginal utility per dollar of all the goods and services that we buy and use are equal. So how I can get that? If you divide the marginal utility of different goods and services that you buy and divide them by their prices and make them equal, then you can have maximum utility. You can achieve that maximum utility. Are we always happy buyers? Of course not. Go back to chapter 1. Remember when we talked about budget line? Sometimes the goods and services you want to buy are outside your budget line. They're unattainable, right? And as human beings, there's always something you want to buy and you don't have the budget for it. It's just too expensive, right? So we're not always happy buyers, but this consumer equilibrium condition or this utility maximizing rule that I talked about can kind of help us and give this idea how we can be a happy buyer, okay? So to find that consumer equilibrium, find that combination of goods and services that make us happy buyer depends on our marginal utility and our price. If you divide the marginal utility of milk that you buy and divide it by the price of milk, okay, you also buy, let's say, apples. If you divide the marginal utility of apple that you buy and divide it by the price of apple, make them equal. That's the place where you are a happy buyer. Okay, basically by this utility maximizing rule, we're trying to find that combination of milk and apple on your budget line, okay, because we know all the points on the budget line are all attainable, right? But which point you pick at the end of the day as a buyer depends on this consumer equilibrium condition, depends on your satisfaction from your consumption. And that satisfaction comes from this equality between the marginal utility divided by price of your apple, marginal utility divided by price of your milk, okay? It is not, of course, as I said, doable to always achieve the maximum equilibrium in the real world, in reality, but remember that we study different theories to kind of help them understand how we can achieve that satisfaction, the point on the budget line. That kind of makes us happy buyers, okay? So definitely when you study chapter 7, look into this consumer equilibrium condition and the formula. Pay attention also to the formula. And remember, in reality, we basically use and buy thousands of different goods and services. So you should basically expand the formula that I put on the lecture notes for the infinity, because there are so many goods and services that we buy. Okay, so for this week, make sure that you do the smart book reading from this chapter, do the homework for this chapter, and also for this week, you have a discussion number 4, I believe. Let me just double check. Discussion number 4 will be open on Monday, October 5th, and then on October 12th, you have again 1 week to do your discussion. And again, I just wanted to remind you that I need your topics for the term paper. I got so many emails from you guys last week asking me about your topic. Thank you so much. So remember that the term topic is, the term paper topic is due on October 15th. Don't miss it. And again, contact me if you have any question. Last week when I was done grading your discussion number 3, I also posted an announcement on D12 because I see that some of you are doing the same thing over and over again for discussion, which is not right, okay? And I hate to do that point because I know that you spent time writing about it, going in, leaving feedback for your friends and everything, but just do it right, okay? So make sure that you read my announcements about the discussions. Remember, I put everything, all the information about discussion, how you should read the discussion to get the full credit on the syllabus. And also, if you look at the discussion board, I also tried actually to, again, to remind you every time that you open the discussion board how you should respond, okay? So pay attention how you write your discussion. If you are using other sources, make sure that you leave the link for me so I can go and check. I don't want you to copy paste anything. I want you to understand and then write in your own words, okay? And you have to leave at least 2 feedback for your friends in class, at least 2. And it cannot be just 1 line, 10 words, okay? You have to write something meaningful, okay? Because they read all of them, and it should be at least 100 words. So some of you are just keeping this super duper short. So this time for the discussion 3, I started deducting points, okay? Because you didn't pay attention to my previous warnings, or I sometimes I cannot write for everybody. I try to give you feedback for discussion in the grade book, but sometimes it's just, you know, it's just too much and I forget, and I apologize for that. Again, look at the syllabus, okay? You can easily get 100 for all the discussions, if you just follow the requirements that I put on the syllabus. All right, okay. That's pretty much it for this week. Have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions. Remember, our second test is coming up soon. I'm just going into my calendar just to kind of remind you when the second test is. My computer is slow. Okay, so the second test will be over just chapter 5, 6, 7, and it will be, okay, finally, it will be on October 15th. Okay, October 15th, and again, you have 4 days to complete the test. Make sure that you get your webcams for the test. If you do not have a webcam, you are not going to be able to take the test, okay? And again, if you look at week 8, I put some practice questions, handouts for you as a review. So start actually reviewing everything. Again, chapter 5, 6, 7. I tried to keep it short for the second one. The majority of questions are from 6, few things from chapter 5. Lots of questions from 6, some questions from 7, okay? I believe I gave you 35 questions for the test, and I tried actually to give you more time because the test is proctored, okay? So let me know if you have any questions, and have a great